What's going on, guys? This is Dave Heilman, aka Dynasty Dorks. This is the SGPN Fantasy Football Podcast. We're on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, presented to you by WynnBET. WynnBET is now live in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Louisiana, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Tennessee, and Virginia. From boosted same-game parlays to live in-game odds, WynnBET has what you need to win money. Sign up today, bet $100 and get a $100 free bet at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WynnBET. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WynnBET. What's up, guys? I got the Deebo Samuel jersey. We're giving it away this week, I think on Sunday, I believe. Deebo Samuel signed jersey from Pristine Auction. It is super nice, and it's going to be given away for free. If you comment on any video, do this one, of course, and then subscribe to SGPN Fantasy Football and send the screenshots over to SGPN Fantasy on Twitter. It's so easy, and I think only 45 or 40 people have joined. Perfect Christmas gift for the football fan in your life. Do whatever you want with it. Give it out to your league mates. I don't care, but I'm going to have my wife sign up again so I can try to win it for myself. So Brad, we got a listener question. Let's go straight into that.
We do. We got our first listener question is all around who is the rest of season favorite here? Is it Tyler Lockett, wide receiver for the Seattle Seahawks, or Darnell Mooney, wide receiver for the Chicago Bears? Just recently got a little bit of competition from Chase Claypool, but we've seen Justin Fields start to air it out a little bit more here the last few weeks. So who do you like rest of season, Dave, between Tyler Lockett and Darnell Mooney?
Yeah, so listen, we've all had our hits and had our misses. Earlier in the season, I 100% was hitting on Justin Fields. I haven't been recently, but the volume is still down. I mean, he's passing the ball a lot compared to what he was doing before. He's still only passing the ball like 25, 26 times. They're 31st in pass volume. And over the last couple of weeks, it's not like they've gone up to the top 5 if you just count the last couple of weeks. Tyler Lockett is also someone that I was totally down on and out this offseason, and I kind of liked Mooney. But I'm going to go Tyler Lockett on this one. He has been a very consistent receiver this year, and that's been my biggest issue with him. He has not been consistent in the past, but Geno Smith and the way that they are using him in this offense, he has been tried and true. And last week, he killed my Giants. He had the big play, but he hasn't had the huge boom games, but he has not had the huge floor games. And I think Tyler Lockett is going to be a stud the rest of the season.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that. Darnell Mooney's been really kind of a bust up to this point, if we're completely honest with ourselves. He has had a couple good games here as of recently, like we said, because we've seen Justin Fields get the opportunity to throw more than 18 times a game. Tyler Lockett, like you said, that consistency is an issue. I agree with that. There's only 2 weeks out of the season up to this point that he's given you less than double-digit fantasy points, and he's also still given you a week where he scored, I believe, 30-some-odd fantasy points, so he still has given you that boom week, but he's got a really safe floor as well. Geno Smith is lights out right now. DK Metcalf is still nursing that injury a little bit. Tyler Lockett nursing that injury a little bit, but everything seems to be going in the right direction, and I'm definitely rolling with Tyler Lockett for the rest of the season. All right, next question. Who should I trade? Should I trade Ramondre Stevenson, the Stevenson season, running back for the New England Patriots, or shining star rookie Dameon Pierce, running back for the Houston Texans? Who are you trading and who are you keeping, Dave?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I'm gonna keep. I heard Ramonster Stevenson when they were doing the Halloween nicknames, and nice. I love it.
Nice.
I'm gonna keep Stevenson. This Texans situation is just getting uglier and uglier. And I know Pierce is getting the volume, but he's not, it's not as good of an offense. I know the Patriots offense is not the best in the league, but I do like what Stevenson can do. Plus, I think you can get more for Pierce in a trade.
Yeah, I think you're actually I'm a little bit on the opposite. I think you're going to get more out of Ramondre Stevenson out of a trade than you are with Darnell or with Dameon Pierce, because he's getting that passing volume also. And most leagues now are either half point or full point PPR, and Ramondre Stevenson has eaten those receptions up. So I think he's going to be more tradable. Now, maybe you've got a point to where maybe you could get more out of Dameon Pierce if you find the right buyer. But I think from a trading perspective, Ramondre Stevenson is going to be the easiest to kind of drive that value up and get multiple people kind of bidding against each other wanting to hold of him. I would personally prefer Ramondre Stevenson on my team because of the long-term value that I think he might bring. You still have to look at Dameon Pierce as a fourth-round pick on a really bad franchise that may be looking to move on from him in a year or two. I do still think, obviously, he's a starting running back for the Houston Texans moving on to next season, but I think Ramondre Stevenson's a guy that I want to keep because I just think he's got more of that dynasty value in the long term, and I'm going to be looking to trade Dameon Pierce in dynasty leagues. If it's redraft, it's the complete opposite. I'm trying to move Dameon Pierce and hold on to Ramondre Stevenson. So it is a little bit different depending on what type of fantasy football we're talking about.
Yeah, and you never know what you're going to get from other people because you got to know your league. You got a bunch of Patriots fans in there, you're going to get more for Ramondre. If you got a bunch of people that are excited about Pierce. And then if it's dynasty, it's a whole nother situation. Yeah. And in dynasty, they're very close in value. I think I have them back to back in my rankings in dynasty, but Pierce is 2 years younger. But I just, I'm assuming it's a redraft.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to shout out to Almighty Jay and our man Cody Zeeb also does content for SGPN Sports Gambling Podcast as well. So thanks for y'all's questions before the show.
Cool. Well, let's check in with the sponsors real quick and get into some dynasty trades. Before that, I do want to just remind everybody, subscribe, like, enter the contest. But it really does support the show. If you're listening, make sure you give us a review. It really does, show your support. If you're thinking about joining WynnBET, now is the perfect time. If you're ready to win money and boost your odds, WynnBET is now live in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Louisiana, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Tennessee, and Virginia. We're bringing the excitement of Wynn Las Vegas to online sports betting and casino play. Exclusive rewards are right at your fingertips with Wynn Rewards on WynnBET. Be on the lookout for our WynnBET Win Hour each Thursday from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. During WynnBET Win Hour, marquee games of the week will have the better odds on WynnBET, giving you a larger payout opportunity. Great promos, odds, and payouts are happening right now at WynnBET.com. From boosted same-game parlays to live in-game odds on every major sport, WynnBET has what you need to win. Ready to play? Sign up today to receive a special offer. Bet $100 and win $100. So much to choose from. All you have to do is head over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WynnBET. Just so they know we sent you. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WYNNBET. Claim your free bet today. Offer subject to change. Terms and conditions at WynnBET.com. Must be 21 or older and present in the state where playthrough WynnBET is available. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call 1-800-522-4700.
Yeah, and you can see on the bottom of the screen right now, if you're watching, that we've got that beautiful Deebo Samuel jersey up for grabs for you as an SGPN Fantasy Football listener. However, the Mothership Sports Gambling Podcast is also giving you an opportunity to win an autographed Lawrence Taylor or Brian Dawkins jersey. All you got to do is go to youtube.com/Sports Gambling Podcast and comment on any video. And here's the beauty of it. You could comment on as many as you want, and all of them count as separate entries to win those jerseys. So go in, watch all 100 videos, comment on all 100, and you just got 100 entries to win that Lawrence Taylor or Brian Dawkins autographed jersey. So make sure you turn your notifications on as well so that you don't miss out when SGP contacts you when you win. That winner will be announced on Sunday as part of the recap show. So make sure you tune in.
All right. So We're going to be doing a little this or that. We haven't heard this song in a little while, so got to play it. Surprise Brad with that one, but he did a nice job putting it together. We got to put it to use. Shout out to WinBet. What's our first trade?
All right, so check it out. Here's what we're going to be doing today. We're talking through some of the most traded players over the course of the last 30 days and found some nice one-to-one trades to kind of take a look at and say, what do we like? What side do we like? What do we prefer? And we're starting with the top 5 sold running backs over the last 30 days. I'm just going to read the 5 names first so you kind of get a grip of who we're talking about. We're going to be talking about Breece Hall, right? And that injury to the ACL. We're going to talk about Dalvin Cook and Joe Mixon. Christian McCaffrey and Travis Etienne are the five of the actually the top 5 most traded running backs according to my fantasy league right now, on all the leagues on my fantasy league. So here's the first trade we're going to look at, and it's involving Breece Hall. So we all know from a dynasty perspective, he's injured. You sell him now, you might get a late first for him, something like that on best case scenario. But what if I told you you could trade him for Deebo Samuel straight up, wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers? Is that a trade you think you'd be willing to take, or which side would you prefer between those two?
Yeah, I definitely would prefer the Breece Hall side. I have him higher in my dynasty rankings. I do know that would be a difficult decision in the case where I'm a contending team. I'm trading off one of my best players for a player that is not playing this season. If you are, this is Jake. Shout out to Jake Estes. He put out a great tweet today, and it says, "Go buy Breece Hall. Go buy Javonte Williams. It'll help you get the number 1 pick." And then go draft Bijan Robinson. And so I love that. And that's exactly what you're going to do here. You're getting rid of Deebo, who honestly is definitely not been as good this year, who was he was hurt a lot by that guy on the bottom right here, Christian McCaffrey coming over. And Breece Hall's a stud. He's still just 21 years old. He's going to be fine coming off an ACL injury. I would definitely take Breece Hall.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at too, but I do think the context that you provided around contending versus rebuild and whatnot, even if you're a middling team, let's say you think you might squeeze into the playoffs, I still think it's the right move to go and get Breece Hall and move away from Deebo Samuel. Like you said, that volume, we expect Deebo to kind of drop down a little bit with Christian McCaffrey getting all the work out of the backfield now. So I would tend to agree with you there.
And if you're not a contender, we've all been like part of those, like you're fans of those franchises that like the Colts, like they just like, what are you doing? You're putting together like a team so you can get a B grade. Like stop doing that. You don't like use first round picks. You don't like go after people in free agency. Like they're just not aggressive, and they put together an okay roster, and now it's bit them in the butt.
Yep.
But like they've had a good team, but it's never been one like in the last like 10 since Peyton's left, it's really not been a team that has that like star power, and you need star power. And so if you're not really a contender, you're a middling team, you probably want to do something like this.
Yep, most likely. All right, let's move on to the next guy on the screen, and that is Dalvin Cook, running back for the Minnesota Vikings. And what if I told you you could do a 1-for-1 trade for another injured guy, kind of like what we just talked about, but not as long-term, in Hollywood Brown, a guy that the Arizona Cardinals gave up a first-round pick for before the season started? Is that a trade you'd be willing to make, moving on from Dalvin Cook to get Marquise Hollywood Brown?
Yeah, I think I would. I mean, you look at Dalvin Cook, he's 27 years old or 26 years old. He's not going to be around for too much longer. Marquise Brown's going to be around for much longer, and he hasn't been as good this year. You're seeing a whole lot of Alexander Mattison. He's been good, but he hasn't been, that elite guy that we've seen in the past. He's already 27 in August. He turned 27, so he'll be 28 next year, and that's kind of the end of it for running backs. 85% of RB1 production comes from the ages of 22 and 28.
Yeah, this one's a tough one for me because I think Dalvin Cook is a little underrated, really, when we look at what he's done this year because he's not scoring a ton. He's not getting a ton of receiving work like what we're used to or what we kind of thought was going to happen in this Kevin O'Connell offense. But he's rushed for over 75 yards in every game except for one this season. He's had a couple games over 100 yards. He's getting touchdowns on the ground. He really has been a solid fantasy football asset for you this year. And he hasn't, knock on wood, got that injury bug yet, like what we're used to Dalvin Cook seeing. He misses a game here, a game there kind of thing, where Alexander Madison really gets that opportunity, and we haven't seen that. I hope we don't. I do own him in a league where I'm trying to win a championship, so I kind of need him to stay healthy, if I'm completely honest. But I can see if you're, again, a lot of these kinds of trades that we're going to talk about are dependent on the situation, and they're good for both sides. That's the nice thing about it. If you're trying to win, you've got Hollywood Brown sitting on your IR. He's not going to be back for about 4 weeks or so. And somebody who doesn't need Dalvin Cook because they're rebuilding says, you know what, I'd like to take that shot on Hollywood Brown. Let me go 1 for 1. Maybe you can squeeze a third or a second round pick out of them also for Dalvin Cook, right? So you get to play around with it a little bit. So I really like both sides of these trades, assuming that one is a contender and one is kind of a rebuild.
Yeah, and I'll definitely agree with that. Not that I'm going to change my answer to Dalvin Cook, but again, if you're a contender, there's a whole lot of players in that Marquise Brown range. There's not a lot of guys in the Dalvin Cook range right now. And if you're a contender and you win, that's all that matters. So like Dalvin Cook is someone that is like, he's a great RB2, and he's someone you could put as an RB1 on your team. So you're bringing him over in a trade. He's probably your RB2. Yep. And so, go win that championship. Don't necessarily always worry about the long-term value. Marquise Brown's going to play longer, but he's also had his share of injuries, and he's not under contract. They're going to have to re-sign him this offseason, or next offseason over there in Arizona.
Yep. All right, let's move on to the third guy on the screen, and that is Travis Etienne. And this one is going to be very interesting, I feel like, because the first two were kind of easy, right? We looked at him and said, contending team is going to take this side, a rebuild team is going to take this side. But what about Travis Etienne or CeeDee Lamb? A 1-for-1 trade, Travis Etienne, running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars, or CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys. Which side do you want, Dave?
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I was in a redraft next year, who would I take? I'll go with Travis Etienne, but I can see why someone would go CeeDee Lamb. I mean, these running backs' values change so quickly. My running back rankings article either came out today or is coming out tomorrow, but I did move Travis Etienne up a lot. He's very high in my Dynasty running back rankings, and I'll take him.
Yeah, this one's a tough one for me because I think it's a little more apparent of really an even trade and a positional need, right? A team that's kind of heavy on running backs and a team that's kind of heavy on wide receivers saying, hey, let's swap a stud for a stud. It helps us both, and it's a pretty even trade. I do think it's even. If I'm rebuilding, I think I go CeeDee Lamb, though. And the reason is typically when you're in that rebuild, you're going to be looking to stash those wide receivers first. That's kind of the position you go after first. You get those young guys that you can hold for a few years while you're building the rest of your roster. And if you're, a typical rebuild, you're 2, maybe 3 years out before you've got a legitimate contending type team, unless you just are really able to make some hellaciously good trades to make your team that much better every single time. I really do think CeeDee Lamb is the addition to make in that rebuild, and you get that value out of Travis Etienne right now. Again, because of positional scarcity and all this, I'd probably be trying to get a slight pick added on top of that if I could. But I think this trade is dead nuts even 1-to-1. If I'm trying to win now, it just depends on positional need. But if I'm rebuilding, I'm definitely probably going the CeeDee Lamb side just because of that longevity.
Yeah, no, I can see that as well.
All right. I see we got a question. You want to do the question or finish these two up?
Yeah, we had the question. I also added one to the group. I don't know if we're going to talk about AJ Brown, but we have another AJ Brown one from Twitter.
Okay. All right. Let's throw this question up. All right, from Ethan John. He says, should I start Curtis Samuel or Deonta Foreman? Deonta Foreman, running back for the Carolina Panthers, or Curtis Samuel, wide receiver for the Washington Commanders?
Yeah, I'm starting Foreman. He looked great last week. I know that Chuba Hubbard might come back this week. It's not a guarantee he comes back. And even if he does, I've said Foreman is the backup behind Christian McCaffrey the whole time. He played really well in mop-up duty for Derrick Henry in a few weeks last year. And that's the identity of this team. They are going to run the ball. And so Deonta Foreman is my guy. Curtis Samuel's had some great weeks, but we've seen it really tail off. And he can really let you down. And I think the volume makes Foreman the safer play.
Yeah, I mean, with Tyler Heineke, we've seen him hyper-target kind of Terry McLaurin. That's his go-to guy, whereas Carson Wentz was more willing to kind of really spread the ball out. And he actually kind of hyper-targeted Curtis Samuel, right? If we really want to get into it, double-digit targets in, I believe, every outing that Carson Wentz started. Whereas Deonta Foreman over the last 2 weeks has been the bell cow, right? He got the bulk of the carries. He got all the, the bulk of the carries the first week. He got all the carries last week with Chuba being out. And now we're looking at him going up against the Cincinnati Bengals defense that just allowed Nick Chubb, who I'm not comparing the two, right? But he just ran for over 100 yards and a couple touchdowns against kind of a weaker Cincinnati Bengals defense. And I'm not sure about Hendrickson and how healthy he is coming out of that game and whether or not he's going to be full health. They also lost some other pieces. So it's going to be very interesting. I think Deonta Foreman with the volume and the opportunity against the Cincinnati Bengals is definitely the play.
Yep. He had another question as well.
Let's see. Oh, there we go. I missed that one. Sorry about that. Yeah.
And yes.
Smash it.
Yes.
100%.
Leonard Fournette is not getting the passing volume he did last year. Last week, he had 9 carries for 27 yards. He's an absolute sell. The fact that he scored a touchdown last week keeps the window. It is holding that window open that you can possibly sell him. But coming off of, they're looking to change this offense. And the thing that they could do is look at that running game and say, you know what, Rachaad White's going to get 50% of the snaps, or we're going to ride the hot hand. And next thing you know, Rachaad White's the starting running back. Ramondre Stevenson is that dude. You got to go get him.
Yeah, if that's the trade, you absolutely take Ramondre Stevenson. I'm not as worried about Leonard Fournette. He's still, outside of last week, he's been getting a shit ton of targets. I mean, 6 targets, 7 targets, 11 targets, 6 targets again, right? So there was a stretch there where he was really being pretty heavily targeted in the passing game, as well as getting some volume. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense is just rough right now. And I like to hope that they kind of straighten it out, that Byron Leftwich, Tom Brady kind of figure this thing out and get to be a little bit more of an efficiently run offense. And I think Leonard Fournette's going to be a big benefactor of that. But if you have this offer on the table, or if you think you could offer that and get it, I absolutely think it's a smash for Ramondre Stevenson.
Yeah, Daniel, do this trade. Wait, I'm sorry. I missed the whole Mixon part. Mixon and Mooney for Evans and Kirk. It definitely changes it for me. As far as like not so easy. I thought it was Mooney for Evans and Kirk, and I was like, yeah. You need receivers, and you have Pierce and Saquon. So I say this every week. Like, if you have 3 running backs, you're not safe. Like, Saquon's on bye this week. Pierce gets the Eagles. Like, it's a terrible matchup. And then you have Mixon. But if, like, Pierce gets hurt, you have Mixon and Saquon, and then somebody goes on a bye week, and next thing you know, you're starting Brad next week. So,
hey, I'm pretty good. Don't underestimate.
You need the running back depth. But Evans and Kirk are good. I like them both over Mooney. So I can see why you're doing it. I would like to have another running back to be able to do that trade and just not have Pierce, Saquon, and then nothing.
Yeah, it's definitely the other side for me as well. I'm gonna go with Mixon and Mooney. I think like you said, that too, and you got to imagine there's probably a flex. So Mixon's most likely starting for you every week anyway, right? I do think it kind of depends on who your wide receivers are, also, though, right? You're trying to make that run. If Mooney is your wide receiver one, you might be in a little bit of a problem there,
You might have
right?
just lost Bateman and Thomas.
Yeah, so it kind of depends on what the rest of your team is, but just in a vacuum, you can't move Mixon and Mooney for Evans and Kirk. I don't think that's a good move.
I'm not going to make that move. Mooney and Kirk are very close. Mixon and Evans are close, but Mixon is a starting running back, and those are hard to find.
Yeah, I'd probably feel a lot better if it was Mixon and Mooney for Evans and I don't know, Antonio Gibson, like some other running back to kind of help you out a little bit. I don't like losing a player like Mixon, who right now is a top 12 running back, for not another running back that you can plug in. So,
So the one from Twitter that I wanted to talk about was from Michael Nelson, and he had hit me up earlier and said, what do you think about this trade? Ended up, changing around a little bit. He sold A.J. Brown. He got Garrett Wilson, Javonte Williams. Originally, it was Jameson Williams. Garrett Wilson, Javonte Williams, and a 2024 first for A.J. Brown. He's rebuilding. He's the 12th team.
So Garrett Wilson, Javonte Williams, a 24 first for A.J. Brown.
Yep.
That's a good haul.
Yeah, I think that's a good haul. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. You if you're going to trade a stud like A.J. Brown, you do it after a 3-touchdown week, and you get that kind of a haul. You don't trade him like you wouldn't trade Jamar Chase right now, who's hurt. You would trade Jamar Chase after he had the monster week. And so if you're going to trade any of these guys, you have to wait till like 3 touchdowns. Like that's probably not going to happen much this season.
Yeah.
And Javonte Williams is worth at least a first. Garrett Wilson's worth at least a first, and he got another first. So it's like 3 firsts, possible, like maybe 4 firsts if you consider Wilson or Williams worth more for A.J. Brown. I like that deal.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with how comfortable you are with Javonte Williams being out for really basically a season and a half to 2 seasons. The ACL and the LCL is not a good combination right now. That's a hard injury to come back from. You're seeing some issues with J.K. Dobbins right now, which is a very similar injury. So you have to be comfortable with Javonte Williams and have faith that he's going to come back and be at form, or this isn't as good of a trade as what we think it might be right now. I would be a lot more comfortable if that 24 first was a 23 first. I think that would make me feel a little bit better about it and taking on that risk that's associated with Javonte Williams. But you definitely cannot argue with the fact that you're getting a haul in a rebuild moving A.J. Brown for those 2 players in a pick.
You're getting Garrett Wilson and you're getting 24 first. And then, you have other players too. Like, don't just look at J.K. Dobbins as the case study for this type of an injury.
Yep.
There's guys that, shredded their knee and they're out there playing well. There's guys that shredded their knee and they're out of the league. You have a lot of in between as well. Gus Edwards had a similar injury to J.K. Dobbins. He came back, but then he had the hamstring injury.
Yep.
But you have other players that, tore their knee up and they came right back and we're fine.
Yep.
But it is definitely a longer recovery.
Yep. You just go into it understanding that, right? Don't think he's going to be back by week 1, because it's just an ACL tear, right? Because it's not going to be that simple for him. So
for sure.
All right. So we had a question about Joe Mixon, right?
Yep.
Somebody asked about it. That's the next guy we're going to talk about. And I've really got 2 names I want to tie to him. So I want who do you want out of the 3 of them? And maybe we do a keep one, trade one, cut one kind of thing. However you want to do it. I'm going to give you 3 names though. Joe Mixon, running back for the Cincinnati Bengals. DJ Moore, wide receiver for the Carolina Panthers, or Chris Olave, wide receiver for the New Orleans Saints. So Mixon, DJ Moore, or Chris Olave.
I'm going to go with Olave. I do like Olave. I'm assuming this is just this is a redraft or dynasty trade.
These are all dynasty trades.
Yeah, I'm gonna go I'm 100% going to go with Chris Olave.
Yep. Yeah. So for me, it's mixing on the bottom end of the spectrum right now. So I'm looking at either DJ Moore or Chris Olave here. Do you believe that DJ Moore is going to turn it around with whoever is the quarterback of the Carolina Panthers next year? We have seen him start to produce over the course of the last couple of weeks with PJ Walker at the helm. Do you expect that to continue?
No, this is where you trade DJ Moore. We're not in the receivers yet, but this is where I'm trading DJ Moore.
Yeah, so I could see somebody who likes DJ Moore. Just we've seen him on the field with poor quarterback play before and really produce. Just needs maybe a little bit of touchdown uptick. But I think I'm going Chris Olave here as well out of the three. You get the youth, you get a guy who you see being targeted down the field, whether it's Jameis Winston or Andy Dalton, it doesn't matter. Michael Thomas just got put on IR. They said he's likely to not play the rest of the season now. Jarvis Landry got a limited practice in. He may be back. So Chris Olave is the man. He is the future for the New Orleans Saints as far as the wide receiver position is concerned. And I think that's a smash play out of the three, to be completely honest. So,
yep.
All right, the last running back we will talk about is the man who just did something that hasn't been done since 2005, LaDainian Tomlinson, and that is Christian McCaffrey. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, he threw for a touchdown, caught a touchdown, and ran in a touchdown all in the same game last week. So, Christian McCaffrey or Breece Hall? One for one.
Yeah, so this really depends on your roster. So, I just did my Dynasty rankings, and I can pull up to see exactly where I'm at on this. I'm gonna take Christian McCaffrey if I'm a competing team, but I'm gonna take Breece Hall if this is a startup, and I'm looking for the long run. So I just redid my rankings, and I have Breece Hall at 5, Christian McCaffrey at 8.
Yeah, I think all of these trades are really solid trades for both sides. Again, assuming that we kind of understand the perspective, and that is I'm trying to win a championship. I want to go get CMC, or I'm rebuilding for the future. I want Breece Hall, so I 100% agree. And I see a last-minute decision, so let's get to it.
Yeah, and I mean, you've got a couple. Yeah, neither of these teams playing tonight. You should be okay. But barring any changes, I'm going to go with Evan Ingram. He's been playing really well. He's been very involved in the offense, and I'm going to stick with him. But I think they're both okay plays. Just hoping they get in the end zone. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go Hayden Hurst just because he's been more consistent the entirety of the season, right? I think if you look at the last 3 weeks or whatever it's been, right, Evan Ingram's really been pretty solid for you. He's gotten you double-digit points. But before that, it really took him a while to come on. So which is the tale of truth? Is it the beginning, the first 3 or 4 games of the season, or is it the last 3 or 4 games that we've seen? Hayden Hurst has been pretty consistent for the most part throughout the entirety of the season, getting targets, maybe not necessarily with production, but he's been getting the targets. And I think that's the guy that I just feel safer about right now, especially with Jamar Chase being out and you've got some injuries to T. Higgins kind of nursing a little bit. We saw Mike Thomas not be the guy. I mean, he dropped a couple balls that were not even partially contested. He just let him hit him in the hands and they fell down. So I think Hayden Hurst is the primary benefactor there, and that's the guy that I'm going to stick with this week.
Okay.
So, all right. Well, let's move on to the wide receiver position. And I didn't get pretty little visuals up there for these guys. So I'm just going to go one by one here. Again, this is going to be 5 wide receivers, the most traded over the last 30 days. And the first guy is none other than primary target for Derek Carr, Davante Adams, wide receiver for the Las Vegas Raiders. And would you prefer him or Devonta Smith, Philadelphia Eagles wide receiver we get to see tonight?
Oh, that one's easy. And so this is a dynasty trade.
Yep, all these are dynasty.
So you have to think about that. I'll still take Davante Adams.
Yeah, I'm going Devonta Smith here. Now, I do think you could probably get more out of Davante Adams out of a trade, but we strictly wanted to look at 1-for-1 trades. And Devonta Smith is definitely a guy I'm okay getting out of a move from Devontae Adams. Like we talked about earlier, I might be looking to throw a pick on top of that if I can get a second or something like that. I'm going to try to do that. But Devonta Smith is a guy I believe in personally. I just think he wins at all levels of the game, and he's tied to what we think is a pretty damn good quarterback at this point, Jalen Hurts, who's playing pretty well. He's not throwing for a ton of touchdowns, but he is definitely improved as a passer from what we saw last season. So I'm okay making that move from Adams to Devonta Smith. All right, next guy is Stefon Diggs, wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills, the second most traded for wide receiver over the last 30 days. And would you prefer Stefon Diggs or Amon-Ra St. Brown?
That one is definitely, for me, that has a lot to do with where your team's at. I'm going to go with Amon-Ra St. Brown on this one just because he has the long-term value. Stefon Diggs is great, but Stefon Diggs, just like Adams, the two that you picked so far were a 29-year-old receiver and a 22-year-old receiver. The second trade is the 29-year-old receiver versus 22-year-old receiver.
Yep.
So it all depends on where your roster is. If you're looking to compete, same with the McCaffrey thing, you take that guy. In a startup, I can see taking the other guys. At the end of the day, I want the guy that's more valuable to me now, and I'm treating them like assets. So I'll go with Stefon Diggs just because I'll switch it to Stefon Diggs. I can get more for Stefon Diggs in a trade. So I just treat it as an asset. I'll take Diggs.
Yeah, I'm going to go with kind of the same thing I said before. I'm okay with Amon-Ra. I'm looking to try to get a pick added to that. Again, a second-round pick or something like that if I can. That's the kind of move I'm looking to make if I can move a Stefon Diggs or Devontae Adams, one of these young studs that we know is producing already, and we expect them to take maybe that third-year leap like what we used to think until Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson came into the league, right? That third-year wide receiver breakout was kind of the norm. So I'm going to take the Amon-Ra side here as well if you could get a pick.
All right, this is Michael that had that trade earlier we discussed with Javonte Williams. So my team is going to be in a 3 to 4 year rebuild. I'm by far the last place team with 2 top 5 picks next year, 3 in 2024. Best players are Hall, Pitts, Watson, Lance, Javonte, Dobbins, and Garrett Wilson. I don't think you're that far away.
You're not 3 or 4 years away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with those picks, 2 top 5 picks next year, if you can find a way to land Bijan Robinson, then you're Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, Javonte, who cares about Dobbins at that point? You're set. But you could also, with one of those top 5 picks, get one of those top quarterbacks. Whether it's CJ Stroud or Bryce Young. There's also some stud receivers coming out. Like if you could get Jordan Addison or go get Jackson Smith and Jigba, you're going to be in good shape. In 2024, it's a really talented class. Like I know the kid from Texas needs a haircut, but he can sling it. Quinn Ewers is a stud. He is a very good quarterback, and unfortunately, he hurt his shoulder, so we haven't seen him the last few weeks. He's an absolute stud. So there's players in the next 2 classes. Do not forget about 2024 picks in your rebuilds.
Yeah, the one thing I would say around this is your roster on paper looks really good from a dynasty perspective. The concern I have is there's a lot of volatility here. You've got Hall coming back from a major ACL injury, Lance coming back from a major ankle injury, Javonte Williams coming off a major ACL, Dobbins coming off a major. You've got a lot of volatility from an injury perspective that you need these guys to come back healthy. So it may be worth shopping a couple of those guys, whether it be for other young studs or more picks as well, if you're already looking at a 3 to 4 year rebuild, because there's a world where Dobbins just isn't J.K. Dobbins. There's a world where Javonte Williams isn't Javonte Williams, where Lance isn't what we thought Lance was going to be coming back from that ankle injury, right? So there's a lot of volatility I don't know that I'm comfortable with on a rebuild team. So I'd be looking to maybe move a piece or two to get some stability for my roster.
Yep. And Deshaun Watson's played football in 2 years.
Yeah.
So when he's coming back, and he's someone that you could trade for quite the haul here in a couple weeks, but with him being your, like, I don't know. I definitely see what you're saying. And I think this is a 3-year rebuild. You take the rookies next year, you let those guys get healthy and see where you can go from there. You can't trade any of those other guys that are hurt, because the only team that wants them is you, because you're the rebuilding team.
Yeah. I mean, typically you've got another team that's going to be one or two other teams that are willing to do that. But I think the roster that you have now, if all those guys, let's say you're just 100%, you hit 100% on these guys, you're really 2024 is going to be a monster year for you, because Hall, first year back from an ACL, give him kind of a pass. Javonte Williams, give him a pass. Lance, a pass. The second year is really where you're looking for these guys to take that next leap. And then you have a year under the belt of guys like Bijan Robinson, CJ Stroud, if you go and try to get a quarterback, whatever the situation is, and you're looking at an absolute smash squad in 2024. So I think 2 years is really in the realm of possibility. All right, let's move on to our third most traded for wide receiver over the last 30 days. We've already talked about Devontae Adams is number 1. Stephon Diggs is number 2. Number 3 is actually DK Metcalf, wide receiver for the Seattle Seahawks, and a 1-for-1 trade. This is a guy we talked about a little bit earlier, but I'm very interested to see what your perspective is, Dave, and that is CeeDee Lamb. Would you prefer DK Metcalf or CeeDee Lamb?
I'm a Lamb guy, so I'll there's not a huge difference in the really is not a huge difference in the age or the quarterback, and so Geno Smith has played his way where he's not. I mean, he's playing better than Dak Prescott, and it feels like Geno is 20 years older than Dak Prescott. He's 2 or 3 years older than Dak Prescott. So you're playing Dynasty. I play in 2 or 3 year windows. There's so much volatility with GMs and coaches and situations and injuries. You can't just say, well, in 10 years, CeeDee Lamb's going to be this age. And no, I'm not going to play that game. But I'll go with CeeDee Lamb, but it's close.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go CeeDee Lamb too. And I've got a little bit different perspective on the quarterback position. I think there is more stability with Dak than there is with Geno. And that really puts CeeDee Lamb over the edge. What I would say, though, is there that much difference if you're on a contending roster? Or let's say you think you're the 3rd or 4th best team. Would you look to move CeeDee Lamb for DK plus a little bit? Because I think that's really what the value is. I think you could get more than just DK Metcalf for CeeDee Lamb. And I might be looking, that'd be a move I'd be interested to make, even if I was a contender. Moving CeeDee Lamb, getting DK Metcalf, maybe another smaller piece that I could use to solidify my roster for a championship run, or maybe even a year, next year.
Yeah, and when you look at ECR, I'm one of the dynasty rankers, and I will tell you this. Not everybody updates their dynasty rankings every week. Like we do our regular season week-to-week rankings. So I'm going position by position doing my dynasty rankings. I have not updated my dynasty receiver rankings in a while. So take these as they are. CeeDee Lamb is wide receiver 5. DK is wide receiver 11. I feel like that has not moved since the season started. So I just don't know how updated those rankings are. But Brad, you might have some startup data that might be able to help us out if you have ADP.
Yeah, I was going to pull mine up because I just updated mine not too long ago. So I have CeeDee Lamb at 3 and DK Metcalf at 8.
Yeah, so there's
in still the scenario, a decent enough delta there.
Yep, in the scenario again, you got to think of these guys like assets. And if you could trade CD for DK plus, go get him. If you could trade Amon-Ra or Diggs for that guy plus, then you do it. Man, should I trade JT for Stevenson? This is where we're at. This is where we're at.
It is.
I mean, if you're 7-1 or 6-2, then you might want to hang and just kind of wait to see what happens with JT. But if anything else, I think you take the healthy player. I mean, would you be shocked in 3 weeks if they just shut JT down?
No, I would not.
The Colts have nothing to play for. They've already benched their quarterback. They've not made any moves to the trade deadline. They're obviously not a contending team. Why would they put we saw this with the Detroit Lions with DeAndre Swift. They just did not put him in any danger. Yeah. Go ahead, go get Stevenson and just don't have to sweat it.
Yeah, even if we weren't, feared for Jonathan Taylor getting shut down, that offense is just not good right now. Teams don't have to worry about anything other than shutting him down. The offensive line is not that good this year. And Stevenson has absolutely balled out ever since he was given the opportunity with Damian Pierce. The first 3 weeks we were kind of worried, right? We looked at Ramondre Stevenson very much like we looked at A.J. Dillon the first 3 weeks. We're like, oh my God, we thought these guys were going to have a real role and really be startable assets. In the first 3 weeks, they weren't. Well, then Damian Harris got hurt and Ramondre Stevenson got the opportunity to start. And ever since then, he's just dominated. From a receiving standpoint, from a rushing standpoint, from an efficiency metric standpoint, he is an absolute smash. And I would not think twice about moving Jonathan Taylor for him in a redraft league. I know this is a dynasty pod, but in a redraft league right now. All right. So moving on.
Just a reminder, guys, make sure you subscribe and then make sure you send those screenshots over on Twitter to SGPN Fantasy Football. If you don't have Twitter, let us know. Yeah, follow the directions below.
Yeah.
Free Deebo Samuel jersey we're giving away. 3 easy steps. It's free to join.
Yep, absolutely. All right, let's move on to our next wide receiver, and that is T. Higgins, wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals. And this should make sense, right? Jamar Chase goes down. T. Higgins is the alpha. Everybody wants to go get them some T. Higgins, which I think T. Higgins is a monster to begin with. So I would have been trying to trade for him before this anyway. But this is another guy that we've talked about today in a 1-for-1 trade. Would you trade T. Higgins for Breece Hall?
This, again, depends with your roster. I mean, if you have T. Higgins, you're probably not in a situation where you can trade T. Higgins if you're a contender right now. But I am going to go get Breece Hall. T. Higgins is going to be a free agent in 2 years. He could possibly be out of Cincinnati, and we don't know what that would mean for him. I think he's a great player, and I think as a number one on an offense, he would be fine. But Breece Hall, running backs are hard to find. I'm going to go with Breece Hall on this one.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I could also understand both sides of this coin. Again, I think this is a pretty evenly fair trade based on where Breece Hall's valued right now from a dynasty perspective because of the injury. But I would definitely rather have Breece Hall than T. Higgins on really even a contending roster right now, because I don't think T. Higgins is putting you over the top right now to go win something. So I'm going Breece Hall as well.
So something that you guys need to look at, just little Austin Eckler's popped up on the injury report. We know that anytime that happens with Eckler, you get worried. And it sounds like the Chargers are going to take caution. And some people are reporting could be out for multiple weeks with an abdomen injury. Nothing official as far as him being out, but it is something to monitor. Joshua Kelly's on the IR, short-term IR, should be back in a couple weeks with a knee injury. Isaiah Spiller is there. And Isaiah Spiller is someone that you could, in your redraft leagues, stash a little bit if you have the space. But in your other leagues, you can probably get him for nothing. And if something were to happen and Austin Eckler to be out and Josh Kelly's out, it's going to be Sony Michel and Isaiah Spiller. And Sony Michel's been he's not been playing much at all.
Nope. Yeah, I like that. I think even from a dynasty roster perspective, you could end up going and getting Isaiah Spiller on really kind of the cheap if that was a player you were interested in. Again, a kind of a rebuild type situation. I don't believe the injury to Austin Eckler is going to be extended, like a long-term issue for him. So I don't think from a redraft perspective, it's going to give you a ton to do, but maybe he's a spot start or something like that if you need a win. So,
yep.
All right, let's move on to our last wide receiver. And this is an interesting one for me. And we're going to talk about Michael Pittman, wide receiver for the Indianapolis Colts. Would you prefer him or George Kittle, tight end for the San Francisco 49ers?
Who was it again?
Michael Pittman or George Kittle. Michael Pittman, 5th most traded wide receiver as of the last 30 days.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with Pittman, but I can understand wanting to go after George Kittle with positional value.
Yeah, I'm going George Kittle here. That's a guy we've talked about tight ends in the past and how having a stud tight end is really a head up above the competition, and I think George Kittle is that guy. We've seen it the last couple of weeks. And I think he's a guy that is a difference maker on that offense. Even with the addition of CMC, I'm not worried about it. So I'm going to go George Kittle here. I've never been a huge Michael Pittman guy, to be honest. And the Indianapolis Colts are just a mess right now. So I'm going George Kittle.
Makes sense.
All right, let's move on. I've got a couple tight ends, and then we're going to get out of here for Thursday Night Football. And the first one, as you could imagine, is Kyle Pitts, tight end for the Atlanta Falcons. And this trade is very intriguing to me. Would you prefer Kyle Pitts or DeAndre Swift? Again, this is a dynasty trade.
Yeah, both these guys are a headache right now.
You might be either muted or your mic's unplugged.
Can you hear me?
Very faintly.
Yeah, I'm going to go with DeAndre Swift. Here.
All right. Yeah, that's where it's just too good to be true to me. To be able to move Kyle Pitts for DeAndre Swift, not an old running back by any shape of the imagination, a team that really is kind of on the up and up. I believe in Jared Goff. Maybe I shouldn't, but I do a little bit. That team is really playing pretty hard. They've been in a lot of close games this season, and DeAndre Swift is just a monster. This dude is extremely good at playing football, and I'm not saying Kyle Pitts is not, but that team is in literal turmoil right now. And I know they're leading the division right now, but that's just not real to me. I guess I know that sounds weird, but nobody can look at the Atlanta Falcons and say that's a roster that I think can win right now. So, they don't have an answer at the wide receiver position right now. I think Drake London is going to help that, obviously, but now Calvin Ridley's out of town, and you're looking at Olamide Zaccheaus as the 2, Kyle Pitts, no running back. So they need some help, and I'm going to go with DeAndre Swift as well. The last tight end we'll talk about is probably the tight end 1 really in dynasty formats, and that's going to be Mark Andrews, the second most traded for tight end right now. And would you prefer, this is a super flex league, mind you, Mark Andrews or Trevor Lawrence?
So before the season started, I had Mark Andrews in an auction league, and I traded him for Trevor Lawrence and a draft pick. And before the show, I had a Mark Andrews question. Someone asked me, shout out to Zach Noble, who do you value more in Dynasty, Mark Andrews or CeeDee Lamb? And so back to the original question, Superflex, Trevor Lawrence or Mark Andrews. I'm going to take Mark Andrews in this trade just because he's a one of one. I can't trust Pitts. Kelsey's getting older. You got to go with Andrews, and Lawrence has been good, but he's not in like a top tier guy. Like we're not talking about trading like even like Joe Burrow or Justin Herbert. Lawrence is not up there yet. He's a QB2, and he's a QB1 in Dynasty because of his age, but he's a QB2 on a weekly basis. And Mark Andrews is literally like the tight end 1 or tight end 2 every single week.
Yeah, I'm gonna go the Trevor Lawrence side. I just think in a super flex league, A young quarterback like Trevor Lawrence is, you've got to have him. You have to have him. And if you don't, Mark Andrews is just going to sit on your team and rot because he's not going to be able to do anything. And I think being able to get the value of a 23-year-old quarterback who hasn't looked great this season, I'll admit that, but he's also a guy who's seen different offensive coordinators and different coaching staffs over his first 2 seasons. So give him some time to develop under Doug Peterson, and that offense, I think, it's going to pay dividends in the long term. They just added Calvin Ridley, which is a huge plus. They're going to continue to add pieces in the offseason and through the draft. They're a young team, and I think Trevor Lawrence is going to be a smash play in the future. While right now, yeah, I get it. He's giving you QB2 numbers, but I think long term he's going to end up giving you top 10 numbers, and I'm willing to make that move for him, giving away Mark Andrews right now. So,
okay,
get it. That's everybody.
All right. Well, hey, enjoy this game of football.
We're going to.
Good.
Eagles fans are anyway.
Yeah. Hopefully it's better than what we think it's going to be. But yeah, I don't think there's many high expectations. So everybody, as always, good luck this season.
Cheers.